Signed your name, now the bill won't stop.
Big promises, but the truth got dropped.
It's the enrollment trap, but we're fighting back.
If they sold you lies,
You can cut those ties, borrow a defense, take your power back. The enrollment trap.
All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Frank, and I'm here with my co-host, Michelle. If you joined us for episode 1, you know we laid the foundation for understanding borrower defense, what it is, why it exists, and what it definitely is not.
And today we're taking that foundation and building on it. We're shifting from the policy to the people because borrower defense isn't just a government program, it's something that affects real lives, real families, and real futures. Later in the episode, we'll be talking to Frank about this borrower defense process firsthand. But before we get to that, we want to talk about a topic that comes up constantly in our inbox. However, first we want to have a discussion about the recent filing.
And what a filing it was. PPSL's opposition to the request for a stay was a chef's kiss, a masterpiece at snark while remaining professional and legal. So let's talk about it. Michelle, did you get a chance to read the filing?
I did, and I am in agreement. It's chef's kiss. It was very intriguing, and I'm ready to put it on a t-shirt of weasel words and what was that? The other phrase that I can't remember. I'm ready to put it all on a t-shirt. It was so good.
I mean, the arguments that she made against their their request for a stay, and this isn't even the appeal opposition, right? Because I don't think that's due until like June. So obviously we know this is not going to be a quick process. The most important thing right now is the stay. So her opposition, some of the things, you know, like I went through and highlighted some of the things that she said that I was just like, I love Miss Becca. One of
Yes.
the first things that got me was, and this is from the filing, whenever plaintiffs raise the topic of the post-class decision deadline, the department assured the court it was committed to providing full settlement relief and that if the department doesn't issue decisions by the deadline for the post-class applicants, then the borrower is entitled to full settlement relief. I've said this in the chat. I've talked to people about this. You know, because of their lack or their inability to meet any of the deadlines laid out in the settlement for the full class, the decision group, the judge ordered that they come to court like on a monthly basis to kind of give an update on where things were headed or standing. And also, I believe PPSL had to meet with them every 2 weeks on top of that. And that level of oversight required from the plaintiffs for the defendants to deliver is just, in my opinion, ridiculous. And you know, I think it was last week we got their request for reimbursement for 2 years, and people were like, "Wow, $1.5 million," and I'm like, "That's for 2 years." And it's also for all their travel expenses, their meals for traveling, because they had to a lot of them had to travel to DC for these, you know, every 2 week meetings, and then travel to California for the hearings. So, you know, it just gets me that they're now trying to come, and she does say it later in the filing that they literally waited until like, you know, I think it was like 10 or 11 weeks before the deadline to file a motion with the court
Mhm.
to extend that deadline. And it's just like, you literally have known since January of 2023 the size of post class. If you knew, or even if it took you a year to figure out how many, you know, applications you could get through in a week or a month or whatever, you should have been able to calculate based on that. It was going to take us X length of time, and come to the court at that point and said, you know what, we've done some analysis and there's no way we're going to meet this deadline. So can we extend it? And I think it would have been better received coming earlier than at the very end.
Yes, but I think they're just playing games at this point. Uh they're just trying to postpone it and you know, throwing noodles at the wall and seeing what sticks at this point.
Exactly. You
It's
know,
not helpful.
and, and the next point that got me was another comment that was in the filing was the court concluded the December 11th hearing by stating, I am not going to do a written order. This is the order. So if you want to appeal, I think you should appeal pronto. And that was what basically Judge Alsop had told uh, the DOE DOJ. And
Mhm.
then she finishes up with saying defendants did not do so. And that's really telling too, right? Because they waited until January 22nd then to file that second motion for an extension with the new judge, Judge Gilliam, when, if this is such an emergency like they're claiming in this stay, why did you wait until literally 6 days before the deadline to request another hearing to retry what was previously tried on December 11th? Because there's a new judge. When you could have, like the judge recommended, if you wanted an appeal, they should have filed it sooner rather than later. And
My
again,
my yeah, my
go
jaw
ahead.
dropped at the, just opening on the second page, the table of contents, big bold letters, all caps, "There is no emergency."
Emergency. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and she says later something to the effect that this emergency is of their own making, right?
Mhm.
And one of my favorite like lines I tell people all the time at work is lack of preparation on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. And
Yep.
it's so relevant to this case because they literally, dragged their feet on doing anything until 6 days before the deadline, and they knew that was not going to happen in that 6 day time frame. Um, so you know, then again, they asked for an extension of the appeal deadline, which he gave them 2 additional weeks. So originally it was the 9th of February that they had to have an appeal request, or an appeal request submitted. He was nice and gave them a two extra weeks, which was the 23rd then. But then, of course, the East Coast got hit with that snowstorm, so he, without being asked, gave them an additional 2 days, and they filed it on the 24th, which they filed the appeal first, and then they filed the stay on the 27th. So you would think the stay. Well, I guess they may have to file the appeal first and then the stay, because I don't think they can just file a stay without having an appeal on the record. So, but you would have thought, okay, we're going to file the appeal and then have the stay ready to go and file it right away. But yeah, I, in my mind, I know that what they're doing is all just a delay tactic, but it's still very frustrating for those on the waiting end, you know.
Yeah, I mean, being one of those people on the waiting end, it's like, "Can you please just finish this?"
Hmm.
I mean, there's so many people out there that are literally waiting for this to end so they can continue with some life-changing decisions,
Right.
and it's prolonging it. Like, come on, get off the pot.
Right. It's not even about prolonging life-changing decisions. It's also just, like you talked about your experience last week, getting that student loan off of your credit report so you don't have that high debt to income ratio, right?
Mhm.
It hits so hard in so many different areas for people.
Yeah.
And one of the points that Alsop made during the December 11th hearing was about the harm caused to the post-class members. And there's, you know, according to their calculations, there were 205,000 some post-class members. Approximately 170,000 were Exhibit C school folks. That's a lot of people that
That is a lot of
are
people.
you're putting on hold because you couldn't deliver
Mhm.
and you didn't have either the knowledge or the guts to speak out prior to November 6th when they filed their motion. So it's like, to me, it's
I'm
all just a delay tactic.
I think it's one of two things. Either it's just a delay tactic or you have a lot of people that really don't know what the heck they're doing.
Well,
It's got to
well,
be one of those two things.
you know how I feel about Big Red.
Yeah. Yeah, and do we wanna talk about that
we c- let's
later?
talk about Big Red later,
Later.
because Big Red's
Okay.
not involved in the appeal at all.
Right.
Um, so he's on the back burner for now, as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
We can talk about him if we go back to the district court, and
Yeah,
we can critique his appearances in court there.
yeah.
But so go ahead.
Well, let's get after it.
After what?
No, I mean, like, let's get on like,
Oh, so
let's
basically, for the folks in the audience, we can continue this discussion after the podcast. We can talk about this more. You all are welcome at that point to join us on stage and give your input, your feelings. That's fine. But I think we're going to move on now to talking about our topic for the evening. Unless there's anything else you wanted to share about the filing, Michelle.
just that, there's some buzzwords in there that has a lot of commentary that are appreciated from our side, and it was it was, like, the best response possible that I can think of.
Hmm. Yeah,
So props to Miss Ellis. Bravo.
I will say, I don't read a lot of legal documents because typically legal documents are things you're going to read when you're ready to go to bed. Um, but the ones I've read, when they come from our side,
They're so
are
good.
just are so good.
Mhm.
Um, she puts just the right amount of pepper in it,
Yeah.
where it's spicy a little bit, but not pushing it, right? So I
I
do
I
enjoy reading
appreciated
her
this
filings.
one. I appreciated this one where it was like, basically, like, if you could imagine her inner voice going like, "Come on, dude. What the heck are you doing? Let's just, you messed up. Let's just
Hmm.
like you're just delaying the inevitable. Like, just come on." I imagine that's what is her inner dialogue. The
Yeah.
the phrase that like honed 2 phrases I honed in on was that nunc pro tunct and weasel words.
It,
That it's just golden. Just golden.
yeah, the weasel words that cracked me up when I first read it.
Yeah.
But like I said, we can definitely continue the discussion and get the audience's feedback after the podcast. But with that, we're going to turn to our topic tonight, which is why borrower defense takes so long. So today's topic is one that frustrates a lot of borrowers. Why does borrower's defense take so long? People file their claim and then nothing. Months go by, sometimes years.
And that silence can feel like the system forgot about you. Mhm. But the truth is, the delays aren't random. They are real reasons behind them, and understanding those reasons can help borrowers feel less alone in the process.
Right. First, it's volume. When major for profit schools collapsed or were found to have misled students, tens of thousands of claims came in at once. The system simply wasn't built for that kind of surge.
Right. And second, evidence review. Borrower defense isn't a rubber stamp process. The Department of Education has to review documentation, compare claims, and sometimes even investigate school practices. That, takes time.
And then there's policy shift. We all know that Biden had rules in place when his administration was in charge, and then this new administration made some changes to the regulations surrounding borrower defense. You know, they changed the rules, the standards, and the review process. Everything shifts, creating a backlog.
Absolutely. But here's the key takeaway: delays don't mean your claim isn't valid. Let me repeat that. Delays do not mean your claim isn't valid. They don't mean you did something wrong. There's a reflection of a system that's still catching up to the scale of the problem.
And that's why today's interview is so important. Hearing from someone who lived through the process helps put all of this into perspective.
Exactly. So we're excited to welcome today's guest, Frank, our lovely co host. And Frank attended the University of Phoenix and later filed a borrower defense claim after discovering the school had misled him. He's agreed to share his journey with us, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. So, Frank, thank you so much for joining us and being willing to talk about something that you can on a deeply personal level.
Well, thanks, Michelle. I don't think my story is going to be nearly as moving as your story last week, but I will do my best.
Well, that's the thing. Everybody has an individual story, and I don't think
Mhm.
there's any that are better or worse. It's all our truth. So,
Right.
let's start with your story. What led you to enroll at your
So,
school?
I enrolled in 2007. It was a really bad point in my life. I was estranged from most of my family due to a falling out. Um, I had a really good job that I also had a falling out with, and ended up working in a call center for a public utility, making like I think I started at $10.25 an hour.
Mm,
And at the time I was 37 years old. Um and I started working there and I saw all of this opportunity at this company. It was a large, utility company. At the time that I started working for it, it covered three states, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. So I knew there was potential to grow in the company, but every position I saw was requiring a degree. And I unfortunately did not have a degree. So I decided to start looking. And for me, the best option was online because working for a public utility, you have to be available almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when there's outages. So I can't go take classes in a traditional setting because if there's storm duty, I have to be at work. Now, while I'm working, I can do schoolwork while I'm waiting for calls or whatever, but I can't go to a traditional, brick and mortar campus. So I started looking and I came across University of Phoenix. Not, knowing much about it, but, you know, I was interested in knowing what degrees they offered. And one of the things these online universities and colleges do is they'll make you put in all of your contact information before you can really find anything out about the school, right? And like literally, I think within 10 minutes of me putting in my contact information, my phone rang and it was University of Phoenix. And they're like, "Well, what program do you want to go in?" I'm like, "I don't know. I really haven't had a chance to look at what you offer." And they're like, well, what are your interests? I'm like, well, I'm really into computers. And they're like, oh, well, computer programming, that's that's a great career to get into, and it's going to be in demand forever. And it's a well-paid position. And I was like, yeah, I like numbers and formulas and all. Maybe I could do that. And so I was like, yeah, maybe I'll do, like, how long is the degree? What's the cost? And they're like, oh, you know, it's a 4-year degree, but you'll get it done in probably 2.5, 3 years. I'm like, okay, what's the cost? Oh, it's 12,000 a year. And I'm like, okay, well, that's you know
So
36,000 or whatever.
so when you first, like, decided and enrolled, um, what were some of the things that they promised you?
Yeah. So one of the big things was they really pushed that they had partnerships with Google, Microsoft, and well, at the time it was Facebook. It wasn't Meta at the time, but they had contracts with these companies. And not that I was looking to leave my company, but you hear Google, you hear Microsoft, you're like, wow, those are huge companies. So it was partially that. And of course, they said, well, you don't have to worry about the cost because financial aid will cover all of that. You won't have any out of pocket expenses. And I'm like, okay. And by the time you get out of school, you're going to be well trained, you're going to get a good job, and paying back those loans won't be anything. And I was like, okay. I said, well, I need time to think about it. Then they give you
That's
well, you only have until Monday because
right.
that's when our classes close. And if you don't sign up then, you have to wait 6 more months, which turned out to be a lie. You have to wait 6 more months to sign up again. And if you don't sign up now, you're never going to sign up.
The
So there was
urgency.
definitely there was that high pressure, like you need to do it
Mhm.
now, and so yeah, that is really that
So
really
when did you start to feel like, when did you start to notice that just something wasn't right? Did you have any red flags? Did anything, like, make you in the back of your mind go, "Hmm, that doesn't sound right?"
I did. So the basic courses, like your general ed courses, whatever, I wasn't expecting like rocket science, so those were fine. It's when I got into the core courses for my degree program. One of the first things I noticed was the textbook we were using. This is 2007. The textbook was like from 1997. And if you know anything about technology, it progresses
That's before
quickly.
the internet. Not
Right.
really.
But it progresses quickly. So I was
Mhm.
kind of like, oh, why are we using, and I asked my instructor, why are we using textbooks from 1997? And they said, well, the core concepts really haven't changed. And for the language, I mean, it was a language, it was C. They really haven't changed, but there may be better learning techniques and newer textbooks than the older textbooks. But so that just kind of made me go, hmm. And then I remember I had a project due and I was struggling with it. And I reached out to my instructor and said, hey, I'm having this problem and I can't figure out where in my code I'm messing up. And I said, can you take a look at it and help me? He goes, nope, I don't know anything
Wow.
about this. He said, I don't know anything about that. And I'm like, wait,
Wow.
you're teaching the class, but you don't know anything about
Wow.
this? But I will say, he was the exception and not the rule. Because other instructors I had were able to, like, yeah, send me your code. I'll look at it. Now, who knows? They may not have actually looked at it. They could have given it to someone they knew and said, hey, what's going on with this dude's code? Why isn't it working?
Yeah.
But, that really kind of made me go, hmm. But again, it was the exception, not the rule. So it didn't set off the flags as strongly, you know,
It
as I
made you
expected
feel
it to.
like maybe it was just that instructor, not
Right,
all of
right.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm. So you got through and you got your degree?
I did, and the
Okay.
funny thing was, one of the things was how they told me, "Oh, no out-of-pocket money," and after my first semester or whatever they call them there, I was $3,000 short. And they're
Mm,
like, "We need to come up
a
with
lot.
$3,000." And I said, "But you told me financially." Well, it was a little short. And I was like, "Okay." And they're like, "But you can get a private loan. And just get a private loan and you'll be fine." And I was like, "Okay." So I went and I got a private loan. I had to have my dad actually co-sign for me, which my dad and I don't have a good relationship, so that was really difficult for me. But he did co-sign, and I got the $3,000, and I was fine then. And there was never another situation where I had to take out more money. So the student aid or the financial aid did cover the rest of my years.
Wow.
And so yeah.
So was there so you graduated and then what happened after graduation? Like did they like me, they offered job
Right.
placement assistance. Were you
There
promised that as well?
there was the offer of job placement. Every time I reached out, there was like actually a portal on the student website. Every time there was never anything there. Like there was nothing. And when I
Mm,
called, now that when I called my recruiter, I always got their voicemail. And then they weren't calling me back, right?
of course.
When you're getting my money, you return my call, immediately. But now that we're at the end, and
Now
I
you're
have
chopped
questions
liver.
about the post graduation stuff, now it's dead air.
Mhm.
So yeah, there were, and again, I never saw any postings about Google or Microsoft. No, I mean, even if it was an internship, right? Even if they had like an internship where you weren't paid, whatever, but there was nothing pertaining to Microsoft or Google.
So
So
how did that make you feel? Like I know how I
uh,
felt, but how did that make you feel? Like we're
it it didn't, quite honestly, it didn't make me feel too bad because I had a job. Right? Like I was employed, and actually, while I was going to school, I actually got a promotion at work to a new position because they knew I was working on my bachelor's degree. So I went from making like 10.25 an hour to where I think I was making uh like $40,000 a year. So that was a huge jump for me. So it wasn't like, you know, a major concern because again,
mhm,
the student loan piece hadn't kicked in yet, right? Like I didn't
right.
know because there was no exit interview. Like they're supposed to give you an exit interview, explain all that to you. I never
Mhm.
had that to say like, "Oh, your loans are going to come due in 6 months, and this is how much you took out. This is how much interest is accrued since you've been in school, yada yada yada." They didn't go over any of that. Um,
Wow.
so again, I didn't have the I guess anger like you did because I
Mhm.
had a job and I was with a company where I knew I could move up. So
So
that was a bit of a safety net for me.
was there any, like, specific moment that you realized, "Hey, I need to" I like, what was your moment that made you think, "Oh, something isn't right and I need to do something about it. I need to take some kind of action."
In um in I want to say it was 2013 or 2014, I applied for another position at work. And no, I'm sorry, it wasn't even then. It would have been 2011 because I moved out here in 2012. In 2011, I applied for another position, and by this point, I had my bachelor's degree. And when I was interviewing for the position, the woman who interviewed me looked at my resume and said, "You went to University of Phoenix." I said, "Yeah." She goes, "I won't hold that against you. I will
Oh,
base my decision on what you know." So that
interesting.
when she said that, I was like, "Okay."
"What are
you
you
know, so
talking about, lady?"
I didn't push it because she was interviewing me for a job, so I wasn't gonna push it, but
Right.
that's where it kinda went, "Hmm, okay, something's not quite right." But again, I have a different experience from a lot of people because I was in a company that I had built a good reputation with. So it was less about where I went to school and more about I have the degree and I've shown what my capabilities are. So my situation is a little different than some.
Mhm. So then alright, so your experience wasn't, as traumatic as mine or maybe
Right.
others, but it still affected you, you know?
Oh,
You
it did.
you still had to question yourself, like, what did that lady mean? And so then how did you learn about borrower defense?
You know, when I started repaying my loan, the amount was ridiculous, right? Like what the monthly payment was, and I had reached out to FSA and said, we got to do something about this payment amount, and they offered me the IDR, the income driven repayment plan, and I signed up for it, and even that was not a comfortable payment, uh, and it wasn't until you know I started hearing more and more about people who went to University of Phoenix being denied positions, um, because it basically is viewed as like a diploma mill. So that's when I started like really going, did I make a poor decision picking this school?
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I read an article in June of 2022 about the Sweet case. And I said, And I started thinking of all the things that they had told me, the things that they had done, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to apply. The worst they're going to say is no, I get denied, but I'm not, it's, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I tried to apply. It was like
Yeah, so
the,
walk us through the filing process, like, what I know what I
well,
had to do, but mine was on post class.
well,
So,
I'm
what
post
was your
class
process?
too. I'm post class too, but I tried to apply, I want to say early to mid June before the deadline.
Mhm,
And I must have tried 3 or 4 times, and every time I would go through, and this is before I knew about the the Facebook groups, right? This is before I met Teresa or Alicia or got involved in any of that. So I was doing this on my own, not knowing that there were these problems. I must have
mhm.
tried 3 or 4 times, and I said, "Okay, whatever. Obviously, this isn't meant to be." And then shortly after the settlement was released, that it was all said and done, I saw another article and I happened to be on Facebook and I don't know if something popped up on my timeline, but I was like, "Oh, I saw
That
the sweet
algorithm.
case. I saw the sweet case first and I joined that one and I saw the advice that hey, you know, we all know the FSA website stinks, so here's kind of what you can do." And so I was able to actually then get my application in, and thankfully, Alicia, if you hear this, if you're out there, thank you, thank you, thank you, because she pushed for those folks who tried to apply but couldn't, for them to have that tech class. And
Amen. Mhm.
when that first came out, I was like one of the first people to fill that thing out. And I got moved. I got notified that I got moved to tech class the summer of 2024. And then I actually saw my relief in December of 2024.
Awesome.
But the process is definitely not easy to apply. I mean, they definitely don't make it clear for people, the
Right.
instructions, the expectations. So it's definitely that on its own is a challenge, and then dealing with the problems with the website, which are still occurring to this day.
Oh, absolutely. Was there anything that, like, surprised you, like, going through that process, other than it just didn't work?
I think how misleading it is,
Yes.
because there's a part that says about what harm were you caused, and I've heard people say I didn't think of the harm being the loans, right?
Mhm.
They don't think of that financial harm. And I think that is really a big piece of it. You basically paid, like in my case, because I was stupid and got another degree, I had $123,000 in loans. And I was paying $123,000 for basically a piece of paper that people went, "Oh, you went to University of Phoenix? Well, I won't hold that against you."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, you know, going through all of this, like, emotionally, like, what kinda impact did it have on you?
I will tell. I mean, like, the waiting was horrible, and I haven't had to wait as long as a lot of you. The
Mhm.
waiting, I mean, I was going constantly checking FSA, checking my servicer. Was there any information out there? Was there any movement? Because again, when I started this process, I didn't understand really the time it takes and what they have to go through. Even though I went to an Exhibit C school, and it should have been, and I probably was escalated because I was a tech class for 4 or 5 months, and then I saw my relief. But you really don't know going into this what the time expectation is,
Right.
and that
'Cause
does
you
you get nervous.
I probably could have qualified for tech class
Hmm.
if I had known or paid, I was going through my stuff, but I
Right.
didn't even and what angers me is I shouldn't have had to rely on the Facebook groups and Teresa and Alicia. Like, this information should have come from FSA.
Right, but they don't want to make it easy.
Right. Right. So from the time you applied and then walk me through the time period, like from the you applied and then you had full settlement relief. What was that time of space?
I officially applied. Application finally went through July July 3rd of 2022, and then I received full relief. Um, December. It was so weird. December 24th, 2025. So it was almost a 3-year period. Not quite.
Wow. And then do you is it how long did it take to, like, come off of your credit report? Or is it still
Surprisingly,
on there?
no. Surprisingly, it was off my report before I got the refund.
Wow, okay. Well,
Yeah,
when did you
it was
how
quick for
long did you
me.
get the refund? A week? Okay,
The refund took, I want to say, 3 weeks roughly.
that's not bad.
Mm-mm.
That's not
No,
bad. Okay.
but now I don't
Well
know if that's the expectation. So don't hold me to that. That like, oh,
right, right.
because we know the post class they have a year from the date they notify you.
Yes. So, how do you feel now? Like, you got
Oh,
your decision, you got your refund, it's off your credit, you're basically wiping your hands of this. You could be done and just walk away and move on with your life, but how did this haul affect your life? Like, where do you go from here?
so for me, I've spent a lot of time talking to Alicia um, about everything, right? And Alicia and I have developed a pretty good friendship. Teresa and I, talk. I don't talk to Teresa nearly as much as I talk to Alicia, but Teresa and I talk, and um, they both truly inspire me because, again, even though they're named plaintiffs, they could have said, you know what, we got our settlement, we got our stuff. Yeah, I'll still go to the hearings, but I don't have to, run these Facebook groups. I don't have to answer questions. I don't have to, and they didn't give up on anyone.
Right,
They
right,
stayed in the fight, and that's when I kind of said, you know what? I'm not going anywhere, and I've stuck around, you know, a year after, and again, I saw an opportunity with the Discord to kind of take it a step further. But I mean, I'm going off of the example set by Teresa and Alicia, because those two women are just phenomenal. And if you
They are.
haven't, if you haven't talked to them, I'm really hoping that we can get each of them on the podcast at some point so you can just get to know how amazing these two women are.
They truly are, like, remarkable,
Hmm.
from meeting them in person. Even if I'd never met them, I would still be I would have so much admiration for them even if I never met them.
Yeah.
Um, but that leads me to, some advice for other people who may be listening to this podcast for the first time. If you're live in the Discord right now listening to us, you already know, but this podcast is broadcast out into the public later, and uh so let's give some advice for someone who, may be hearing it or learning about it for the first time. So I'd like to say, uh if someone listening is considering filing a borrower defense claim, Frank, what would you like to tell them?
First of all, the most important thing is never, and I mean never, pay anyone to file for you or help you file. There are tools available in this Discord to help you get through that application process. There are other resources. You know, I'm not tooting my own horn here, but the enrollmenttrap.net is our website. I actually developed a bot that can help you by answering questions. If you aren't sure, did my school do something? You can tell the bot what your school did, and the bot will tell you sort of what misrepresentation area this could potentially fall under. No one can tell you if you're, and if you have anyone that tells you, "Oh, I will get your borrower defense claim approved," they're lying, because the
Yes.
only people that can approve a borrower defense claim is the Department of Education, nobody else. So if anyone tries to sell you that line, they are lying. Run. But we have tools that will help you if you are struggling. This Discord is here for support. You can come and ask questions. We'll answer you the best we can. We cannot and will not on the Discord or on our website or in any of our social media platforms offer you any legal advice or financial advice. We are not lawyers. Also understand that all of us, Alicia, Teresa, myself, Michelle, the moderators in this Discord, none of us are paid. None of
Exactly.
us are paid. This is all, we're volunteers to, helping to make sure everyone who's entitled gets the relief they deserve. So if you feel listening to my story or reading about borrower defense that your school did anything that sounds like what we've talked about, go and file. And again,
Yeah.
there are tools in this Discord. There are tools on our website. The bot is great. It will help you find evidence. It will help you write a narrative. If you tell it what you experienced, it will take your words and turn it into a beautiful narrative. Because the big thing is, you have to sell your experience. That is a big part of borrower defense, is convincing the DOE that what you experienced truly was hurtful and harmful to you in some way. But there are tools out there. Don't ever pay anyone. And if Teresa were here or Alicia were here, they'd be screaming that too.
Exactly. And it's important also that, like, we're not gonna do it for you.
Mm-mm.
Like, we can only give you so much advice. The bot can
Right.
almost, only give you so much advice. Like, you still have to do the
It's got to
work.
be your story, and no
Yes,
one can tell your story but you.
exactly. So, Frank, like, now that you've been through this, I mean, how has it changed your view of higher education and student loans?
The schools are one part of the problem. The second part is the predatory lending. I mean, literally, if you were on any kind of payment plan for your student loans, you are accruing more in interest than what your monthly payment is. So that balance is never going to go away. It is a way for the government and the schools to keep you shackled and in servitude for your entire life. If I ever wanted to go back to school, I would only go and take the classes that I can afford to pay out of pocket.
Right.
Higher
I
education, I just think you need to investigate the school before you go. Look at its ratings. There's all kinds of documents you can Google to get school ratings. And
In reviews,
yeah,
like my
yeah,
nephew, before he started college last year, his high school gave him a site. I'm so glad and thankful that they have these now, but it's kinda like a Yelp for different colleges,
hmm
and he was going through all of the local colleges in our area and reading the reviews, and the students were actually commenting saying, "Yeah, this is school's really great for XYZ," and then they were talking about, "Well, a lot of our students or a lot of my classmates failed this class because the instructor, wasn't present, wasn't, interactive with us." So and I think that has stemmed from all of us a little bit older generations, um, having to go through this and
right,
teaching the younger generation like, "Hey, vet your schools. Don't make the
yep,
mistakes we did out of desperation."
yep.
Mm.
No, I agree.
All right. So, um, hearing stories like this really highlights why borrower defense exists. So, it's not just a policy, it's a protection for people who are misled or taken advantage of.
And if you're listening and you're unsure whether your experience qualifies or you're feeling overwhelmed by the process, you're not alone. There are resources, there are protections, and there are people who've walked this path before you.
Absolutely. So, and just to give you another huge thank you, Frank, for sharing your story. If anybody else is interested, we'd love to hear your story as well.
And next week we're going to do something we're really excited about, a deep dive into our misconduct matcher tool. We'll break down what it does, how it works, and how it can help borrowers identify whether their school engaged in misconduct that could support a borrower defense claim. And don't go anywhere because right after this episode, we're hosting our after broadcast Q&A where we answer your questions live.
Great. So stick around, grab a drink, get comfortable. The Q&A starts in just a moment. And remember, if you want to share your story on an episode of The Enrollment Trap, just reach out to us, myself, Frank, on Discord, and we're happy to bring you on board.
Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and remember, knowledge is power. Thank you.
Right on. Thanks.
It's the enrollment trap, but we're fighting back. The enrollment trap.